Hey, what's up you guys, the Curious Owl here, and today I will be sharing with you guys my November wrap-up. So November was a very crazy month for me because for those of you that might have been around for a little while, I got married at the very end of October on October 31st, and for about a week and a half or so, I was pretty much on honeymoon mode. From the 9th to the 15th, I basically was on my actual full-on honeymoon with Robert. So I spent not as much time reading, I think, as I had wanted to, because I was really trying to take the time to relax and enjoy my honeymoon. And then from the 16th to the 18th, we had gone up into the UP to a cabin that a friend of ours had given us a couple nights free for as a wedding gift. And we got to go up there with Robert's parents and his grandparents. I'm actually kind of happy with the fact that I did make some progress with some books here. I got myself all caught back up on my Stephen King reading series, which is kind of the thing I was really behind on. So this month I read a total of 5 books. I read a total of 1,826 pages and listened to about 17 hours, 4 minutes, and 31 seconds worth of audiobooks. I had 3 physical books, 1 ebook, 1 audiobook, 3 that were from my personal library, and 2 books that were borrowed. As far as my star ratings for the month, everything was 3 stars or above. So it was a really good reading month, I think, in general for me. I had 2 books that were 5 stars, 2 books that were 4 stars, and 1 book that was 3 stars. No 2 stars, no 1 stars, and no DNF. The first one was The Long Walk by Stephen King. I think I was carrying this one over from October into November. This is the second book that Stephen King had written off of his pen name, Richard Bachman. I do have a reading vlog review of this book, so if you would like my more in-depth thoughts on it, I would go check out that video down in the description, and it will be also linked here in the video. I really liked this one. I really thought it was very fun, but some of the references I didn't necessarily get at the time, and thankfully I had someone who, when that video had gone out, had left me several links to the references that were made in the book to help me understand the story a little bit better. I liked the concept of it, this alternate reality kind of thing that kind of comes up post-Vietnam essentially, and I really enjoyed it. But to get kind of more of my thoughts on it, I would definitely check out that video because it basically goes into a lot of the confusion that I had over the course of this book, but still a really good read. Rated it 4 out of 5 stars. Then the next book that I read was The Dead Zone by Stephen King, which in my reading vlog review that I also have of this book, which you can check out in the description as well, I mentioned how I first tried to read this book when I was a senior in high school and how I couldn't get very far into it because at the time I don't think I was in the right mental space to read it. I read this though, and I really loved it up until probably the last third of the book because I felt like there were some things about Johnny, the main character, that I didn't really understand. I feel like that the way that the story had gone did not necessarily add up to what I had built of Johnny in my head over the course of the book. It's a little bit more of a contemporary story in terms of the fact that it's more rooted in a real-time scenario in the 1970s, but it adds on a science fiction element with the fact that the main character, Johnny, is kind of a psychic. He is able to tell a person a future event or something that's going to happen to them or to somebody they care about by either touching them or an object of theirs. If you want to know more of my in-depth thoughts on this one, I would also go check out that reading vlog review as I'll go much more in-depth with it. But I did give this a 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't my favorite in terms of the overall ending, but it was still a pretty good book, and I would definitely recommend as a standalone if you're looking to get into the kind of the science fiction realm of Stephen King, because it's very light-handed, it's not super complicated, and truthfully the story itself I think is enjoyable just reading from Johnny's perspective. And the next book I read was another Stephen King read, which was Firestarter. This is his second science fiction based novel. If you like stuff like the X-Men, I think you would definitely enjoy this. I also have a reading vlog review of this book that you can go check out. It follows a young girl named Charlene. She is basically what's called a pyrokinetic individual. She's able to create fire with her mind. And I don't want to go too much more into it because it does kind of spoil some of the stuff involved in this book, but really liked this one a lot. I feel like the story was just really good. There was one character though that I mentioned in the reading vlog review, John Rainbird, that I feel like I didn't get enough from because he just didn't get the amount of time I think he needed for the story to fully understand him and his psyche and kind of the motivations behind his actions, and I just felt very confused with his character. So I only rated it 4 stars because of that. But again, very enjoyable, very much again like The Dead Zone, a contemporary based setting with a science fiction element. I just think that this one is also another good standalone that you can go into when you're looking to get into Stephen King in the science fiction realm, or in general when you're looking to go into Stephen King, because it's one book. It doesn't have a lot that is very complicated with the story. It's very simplistic. You also connect so much with Charlene and her father Andy as they try to traverse this life of theirs where they're basically on the run. Then the next book I read was not a Stephen King book. It was actually my audiobook I picked for this month, which was Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. This is a nonfiction book that talks about essentially the caste system that is in the United States, and in a lot of ways comparing it to the caste system that you may know from kind of your sociology classes when you talk about with India, and how essentially there are some groups of people in India that are placed lower in the system where they're treated poorly, they don't get as much opportunities as people who may have higher incomes, things of that nature. And essentially it's very hard to move caste. So if you are born into a caste that's very low, it is nearly impossible sometimes for you to move upward and also then gain respect from people in that caste that had known that you were originally from a lower caste. It basically takes that concept that is in India, puts the lens then on the United States and how Black people are treated, and sometimes even other people of color, but more specifically Black people. How from the very beginning, ever since the white people in Europe had basically started taking them and doing things with the slave trade, it goes into the fact that, you know, from the very beginning, Black people have been put on the lowest caste in many scenarios, financially, government-wise, socially. Like, they're the lowest of the low in terms of how they are treated within the United States. And unfortunately, it's something that we are all aware of, I think, but it's not something that we're willing to talk about because it's so weird to talk about for a lot of people. They don't like saying that, you know, they support what's going on or not, because they don't want to show themselves as either racist or compliant in what's going on. It basically made me so mad though, because I recognized all of the things that Isabel had written about in terms of the way that Black people are treated. It made me just so mad that this stuff is still happening, because we know it's happening. We know that it's something that is a problem, but there hasn't really been much progress in terms of moving on from that. And there's a lot of talk about too how the Trump administration, you know, really pushed for this vendetta against Black people and other people of color. This was a book that was published in early 2020, so a lot of the information within it is timely, but it doesn't go as far as like some of the Black Lives Matter movement that happened in June, I believe, because if I'm not mistaken, I think it was published just before. Very, very good read for those of you that are looking to become better allies and learn more about what exactly is the problem when it comes to the fight for Black lives and why it is that we are fighting so hard for Black lives. I highly recommend it. It was one that was on my big ally list when it came to teaching and educating myself on the real issues. And then the last book I completed this month, which was yesterday, was Roadwork by Stephen King. This is the 3rd book in his Bachman books that King had written. This is probably one of my favorite books. I am still not certain where exactly it lies, but I know that this is in my top 3 Stephen King books, because this book was just absolutely amazing. As you'll see in my reading vlog review of this book, I talked endlessly about how easy this book was to read, how easy it was to understand what was going on, and how much I compared it to the play Death of a Salesman, because the whole main character of this book is almost exactly the same as the character that is in Death of a Salesman. It's all about this man who essentially starts to lose grip on reality and lose his sanity in a lot of ways, because a lot of things are happening to him that he can't cope with. And it's a real look into somebody's mental health when it comes to these massive changes that they can't cope with, and compounded by various other things that they already have been dealing with. There was one thing about it that I mentioned in the review that I didn't necessarily care so much for, but I still love this book so much that I'm willing to overlook it, because I felt that basically it had to have some purpose for being there. And I think it did add to the story, while it might not necessarily have been the way I would have gone about it. But if you want to learn more of my in-depth thoughts on this, I would go check out that reading vlog review as well, because I think that it will give you all you need to know about what I thought about this book, but I will say that I did give it a 5 out of 5 stars, and like I said, it is now in my top 3 of Stephen King's books of all time that I have read at this point in my life. Definitely also recommend this one as a standalone because it is a full-on one story, but it gives you a really good idea of how deep King can really get about the human condition and about the human psyche. Like, this is, I think, one of my most favorite books of his because I feel like it's just such a great insight into a kind of character like George Barton Dawes. I think that this was just absolutely stunning. So there you guys go. Those are all of the books that I read over the course of November. Not very many, and unfortunately a lot of them you have to go watch the reading vlog reviews for because I don't want to sit here and talk endlessly about them again. If you are interested in those videos, I will link those down in the description for you guys. Thank you all so much for joining me in this video. If you guys did enjoy it, please do give it a big thumbs up, and if you're not already and you'd like to be, hit the button down below and subscribe to become an owl in our flock, and I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.